Welcome to Sam Outside. I'm Sam and I'm outside taking advantage of our weather conditions. It's a frigid day and we've had some unusually cold temperatures, in fact, in the minus 20 degrees Celsius, wind chills of below minus 25. And what that's done after a couple of days of a warm spell is it's provided a new foundation in the snowpack. We've had a great reduction of snow. In fact, I can see the ground in some parts of the forest that are maybe a little more exposed or a little more windswept. But up in the high ground, I don't have to use my trails. Yeah. So, knowing a little bit about weather, knowing a little bit about safe snow and safe ice conditions, as a former um, rock climbing instructor and ice climbing enthusiast, I have a great understanding of how ice and snow changes throughout the season, but also throughout the day. So we can get plastic ice, we can get brittle ice. And what that means for snow and ice conditions is that there's a level of trust depending on its thickness, its age, oxygen content, and temperature, obviously. So on a day like today, my trails, my well-established trails throughout the winter, they're not as safe. They're just a little more icy, a little more compact. In fact, in some parts of the forest, my walking trail is actually higher than the surrounding untouched, uncompacted snowpack around me. So I can take advantage of getting off trail, and I have some very secure footing, other than the little bit of dust. But what I'm also able to do is venture parts of the forest that I would not otherwise uh, venture across. No, there's still some hazards with the snow melt and the amount of debris that's on the forest floor. There's a chance that there are some hidden slips, trips, and occasion for falls. And I want to be careful how I land and where I land. I want to avoid some injury. But on a day like today, with it being considerably cooler, there's an increased activity in wildlife movement. So this morning, prior to my morning dog walk, we had a nice red fox visit our bird feeding area, and we had a chance to watch it stay for quite a few moments, tilting its head and listening to those rodents, moles and voles and chipmunks and squirrels that have been living all winter in the subnivean zone. That's right, the tunnels underneath the snow, but on top of the frozen ground. And I mean, I've seen videos of it before, and I've only had a couple of occasions, but to see it that close, just out my living room window, to see the fox tilt its head, poise, pounce, unfortunately hitting the compacted snow around the feeders without much success, it was still a treat to see. And so I'm taking advantage of these conditions myself to venture through parts of the forest off trail with some amount of stability and security. I'm not post holing. If you are an avid hiker in winter conditions, you know what that term means, post holing. It's where one footstep just sinks considerably and it stops you, right? There's a risk of hyperextending your knee, twisting an ankle. And that's been the reality of my trail conditions in the past couple of weeks, with my foot trail only being, the width of 2 feet. As the snow continues to melt and as my compacted trail of the season gets a little more narrow, gets a little more icy, my foot can sometimes slide off of that into much deeper snow. And my family, they don't like that. I'm pretty used to it. In fact, I changed the way I walk. I try not to stiffen my leg. I try to have an absorbent knee, a bent knee as I walk, or I just choose not to walk on my trails. And today is one of those days. It's absolutely gorgeous out. There's still a risk of exposure. Keep an eye on my dog to make sure that he's not succumbing to these temperatures with his canine feet. He's not wearing boots, doesn't wear boots. So, and I'm starting to feel it. Get some icicles forming on my upper lip. All right, and my fingertips are going to feel the effects of this by the time I get home. But it's absolutely stunning. By venturing through other parts of the forest, I get an opportunity to notice wildlife tracks, wildlife sign, different birds, and it's doesn't feel like it today, but it is becoming nesting season. So there's a number of wintering birds that are starting to look for others of their own kind, looking for nesting opportunities and setting up territories. A lot of that's based on habitat, but also availability of consistent food sources and the lack of predation, safe spaces. And I do my part by feeding the birds. So as I leave my own property and I venture out into the forest, I know that a lot of the birds that I'm hearing out in the forest itself, despite the distance, they would be avid visitors to my bird feeder. So I know I'm doing my part. And it feels good to contribute to our local ecosystem that way. And I get to see the wildlife coming to my yard and visit the feeders, not only for the birdseed itself, but for the birds and winter rodents that have sustained themselves. So I do that because I would like to consider myself a steward of our local forest and participate in the ecosystem, not only through what I do with my venturing outdoors, but my awareness, right? And I'm very conscious, and I make efforts to notice and try not to have a visible impact other than letting my dog run loose and disturb that wildlife. But it is a means to an end, and it's great exercise for him, and it's part of who he is as an animal on this planet. It's part of who I am as an animal on this planet. I need to be outside. So when the conditions are safe, when the conditions are right, and they don't have to be right, just go outside. All right, dress accordingly. Make sure you're safe, not only with where you're going and what you're doing, how you're dressed, but your time, your exposure. So please, there's no such thing as the perfect day to go outside. Just do it as often as you can. Be safe. Every minute outside has physical, mental, and emotional benefits. So please try it. Change your life. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate that. Talk to you again soon. Bye bye.